Hello everyone, I'm Lynette with Charmed Grammy Crochet and welcome to the dining room. This is going to be a knot yarn video. Everything I talk about is going to be from my trip. So if you don't want to see pictures and hear about the last vacation we just got back from, I totally understand. I don't know how interesting it's going to be. I thought it was an interesting vacation. I don't know how interesting this video will be, but if you want to stick around, I think there'll be a couple of videos. We'll see how long this one goes, and then it'll give me an idea of how many videos there'll be. But right now, this is part one. I don't know how, like I said, I don't know how many parts there are going to be. But we left Ohio and on a Thursday, and the plan was to drive until we got tired. We were heading towards Ocean City, Maryland. It's off season in, everywhere because it's March. We left in February, but it's turned March since while we were gone. And so we got into Maryland and we stopped at the visitor center. We always love to stop at the visitor centers. And we were following our GPS, to the condominium that we rented, and we had a trip tick from AAA taking us the same route. And so the lady at the visitor center said, I know where you're going, and you're going to be heading into Baltimore. It's this time of day. You don't want to do that. She said, let me show you a different route. And she gave us a map, and she put a little sticker on there. So do this, go this way. She says it's much more scenic. This is the way the locals will go to avoid being in Baltimore anytime during rush hour particularly, but it's a much nicer route this way, and you run into these cute little towns. So we said okay. So we went into, the first town was Frederick County. Got a map. It's not a real big area, but on this map, it says, while you're in Maryland and in Frederick County, these are the things to do. And they have the cutest downtown area. We stayed at a Best Western, which was just outside of the downtown area. Here is a map of the downtown area. Just lots of old, old architecture. I personally love old architecture. But this, on the back of this map, there's all the shops, all the places to eat, the things to do, the art. They have all this listing of what everything is on this side of the map. I'm like, that's very helpful. So we went to dinner at a place called, it was getting dark by the time we went to dinner, and finding parking was a little bit difficult. It's an old city. The streets were not made for two cars. They were not made for two cars and parking. They were not built with necessarily parking garages because it was built when there was horse and buggy. So, to say the least, we found a place to eat that had parking, and it was called Black Hog Barbecue. Very good food. And I'll put a picture up here of, I took a picture while we were eating. So this is a picture of Roy and a little bit of the inside of the Black Hog. Really, really, really good food. We would go back there in a heartbeat. But now it's dark, and they had, lights on the streets, like the antique looking street lights. But then, I think in the summertime, this place would be really cool to tour. I would love to go back in the summer where you can walk the streets night and day and stop in all the little shops, and they had outdoor dining areas that would have the little lights going, you know how they do. So cute. But it was dark and rainy and chilly, so we didn't do that. But we did drive up and down, and it was dark, so I didn't take any pictures. We went back to our hotel, and the next morning looking at this, there's a battlefield, and it is called the Battle of, I don't want to say it wrong, Monocacy. It's M-O-N-O-C-A-C-Y. And it took place on this river. So let me see. Here's Frederick. here's the river. I can't read it upside down and backwards. This is the river, Monocacy River right here. And there were some farms there. And the Battle of Monocacy is not anything that you ever heard of before, unless you're a historian. But it's not one that like I was ever taught about. Of course, back when I was in school, I didn't really pay too much attention to history. But this is important. This was an important battle because the Union soldiers were spread out all over the country, and not a lot of them were left in Maryland. And so this battle took place over a 24-hour period over 5 farms. The first of the farms was called the Best Farm. I have a picture of the sign, so I'll try to put Best Farm sign in here. Best Farm, like I said, was the first where the battle happened. And they were fighting over that river. And a couple of other, the Thomas Farm, the Worthington Farm, the Edgewood Farm, and a place called Gabrill Mill. And I will have pictures of some of these places as we go. But just for a little bit of the history, this battle was important because if the Union loses here, the Confederates, this is the last troops. These are the last troops that we have until more can arrive between the Confederacy and the state and Washington, D.C. So there's no one to protect the capital if this fails, if they fail at this Battle of Monocacy. And over 24 hours, they're like, the Unions are, the Union soldiers push the Confederates back, the Confederates come back, it's back and forth, back and forth. They're fighting over territory over this river, and there's farms on either sides of this river. And there are 2 bridges. One is a train track bridge where the train goes by, and the other is a covered bridge for your wagons and your people. And the Confederates, the Union, I don't know placement, I don't remember the details, but there are Union soldiers on the far side and Confederate soldiers on the DC, on the Washington side. So no, vice versa. The Confederates are going to cross the river. If they cross the river, it's bad news. Even though they have crossed the river and then they pushed them back, and so they did that back and forth because this took place over 24 hours. So at one point, the Confederates, or maybe the Union, they burned the bridge. Anyway, they burned the covered bridge, and that forces people, if they're going to cross, they have to cross at over the railroad tracks. And these people were skinny people. I mean, I've seen pictures of their uniforms, and they're like little tiny people back then. I know that the soldiers didn't get a lot to eat and all that, so I mean that makes sense too. But like their uniforms, their waists are like this big around, and their chests are this wide. They would fall through those. Soldiers were falling through, trying to get over the railroad tracks. Anyway, the battle took place over, like I said, all these farms. And I do have pictures of all these farms, which I'm probably playing as I talk. I'm probably putting some of the pictures up. And I will try to put a picture of the sign as to what they are when I put the picture up. And so I'm stalling for some space here because I don't know how to insert pictures unless I'm talking. Or, I have to have the film going. So anyway, the bottom line is the Union soldiers lost at the Battle of Monocacy, which is probably why it's not taught much, because it was a losing battle for us. If the Confederates had won, that probably would have been one for the history books, and everybody would have learned about it. Look, we won here, and then we could take the capital. The Confederacy did win there, but the Union soldiers, which were mostly at this point, most of the trained Union soldiers were out all over the country, and these Union soldiers were mostly just the townspeople. They were the townspeople. There were some trained soldiers. There were some volunteer soldiers. And the battles are called skirmishes because they're not real big. But 23, I want to say 23,000 people died during this. Maybe it was 2,300. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a historian, so check my facts. But a lot of people died. The fields would have been covered with bodies. The people that lived in those farms were home. They're just farmers. Oh, excuse me. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, they're just farmers. They're doing their daily thing. The Confederates come up. You know, people hear about it, and shots get fired. They get fired. The first shots get fired at Best's farm. The Best, them and their children run into the basement, and they're hiding in their cellar during this 24-hour period. They're, you know, they're hoping that they don't get, you know, imprisoned or whatever, dead. Their barn takes some damage. Their crops get all kinds of damage. And eventually, I read on one of the signs there that when the war was over and the Union won, they did file a claim for damages to their property and their crops and all that. And apparently they got paid back for that. So I'd imagine that all the people did that. I guess that's something, I mean, why not, right? So anyway, after the 24 hours, the Confederates won the battles there. But at that 24 hours that the Union soldiers fought the Confederates, that allowed more Union soldiers to come in and protect the capital. If they had lost right away, the capital would have been taken, and the Confederates would have won the war. That's what they were telling us, and I'm like, wow, that would be big changes to the way our country looks today, I'm sure. So the Union soldiers, you know, came in, protected the capital, and the history is what history is now. No changes made. So that's good. It was really cool to see the homes where these people live. They're still there. People still live in. No, nobody lives in the homes now. Not there. But because it's off season, they weren't open to visitors. I think at some point some of them are open to visitors. One of the houses, the Edgerton House, or Edgewood House, and it's really awesome. I have pictures of it, and I probably will be here. I don't know at what point, like where the battles happened, first, second, third, other than it started at Best's farm, and then at some point Edgerton Farm was involved, or Edgewood House Farm was involved, and at the edge of that property is the Gabrill Mill. That's where Edgewood people stored their food. They milled their grain and all of that. The Confederates turned that into, when they took over, I think it was the Confederates. Anyway, the Confederates took that over, and they turned it into a hospital while they were during this battle, and after they won, then they used that as a hospital for a while until the Union came back and forced them away. There is a boardwalk at Gabrill that takes you where you'll see, I have posted pictures of a railroad track over water. That's the Monocacy River. That's where these battles were mostly fought, over this waterway here. So the train tracks that are there now aren't the same ones back from the Civil War, or not Civil War, the Revolutionary War. But the pillars that those original train tracks are still there. And where you see a metal bridge, that's where the covered bridge was that was burned. and that bridge was obviously burned, and over the course of history now it's a metal bridge. And I believe we drove over that bridge when we left Monocacy. And the Edgewood House, when you see those pictures, it's a white, I believe it's a white building. Very big, very fancy. It was the fanciest home in the area. I don't remember what Edgewood did besides the farming. He was more than just a farmer. Anyway, that home is now used there's government offices in there, and they train craftsmen to make things for restoration on the homes all over the country. All the historic places that you go to, the craftsmen that do those crafts, you know, to restore historic buildings are trained. That's a training center for them. I thought that's really cool. I would love to see that, but you know, we were there. I think it wasn't open anyway. It was off season. Everything's closed. But we did do the boardwalk, and I got those pictures. So that was our trip to Monocacy Battlefield. It was the visitor center was open, so we were able to go in and like learn some stuff besides just what you read on the roadsides, you know, that they put up. And that's where we did, I don't know, oh, we threw it away. We got a map, and I think it accidentally got tossed, of like the specific, 5 houses, and we drove them, obviously, because I got the pictures. And so that was really interesting, and the pictures were really cool. When we left there, we headed towards Ellicott, which is also in Maryland, in a little tiny town. And we were told that they have like nice restaurants and shopping, and so we headed there. And I'm going to put up here some pictures of some of the scenery on the way, some of the houses that I saw. There's some pictures of some trees that were frozen. It was so interesting to see that, because the trees in front of us where we were driving were not frozen, but the trees in the mountains were white, looked like they had been covered with snow, but they were frozen. So I think I have 2 pictures of that I'll put up in here for you. And from, like I said, then we went to, in the one house, I want to tell you, there's a house that I'll be in these like pictures along the way. I'll try to put a caption. Part of the house looked like a castle, and it had like a rook. You know how when you play chess and it's got the rook and it's got that, like, you know, but that was at the back, and I couldn't get a good, decent picture of it. And I was like, we're just pulling the driveway. I wouldn't do that. Somebody has to have some sanity. That's him. He's the voice of sanity. I'm like the voice of adventure. Oh, no, wait, they won't mind, really. He's like, I'm not doing that. What, are you crazy? Maybe a little. So then, anyway, we went to Ellicott, and we had planned on having lunch there. Again, parking was a problem because these streets weren't made for cars and parking. And I do have pictures. We parked in the back of a cafe, which was where we thought we would go, like, in and eat. But the cafe was at the back of the building, and it was outdoor eating only. Well, it was cold. It was like 32 degrees, and I'm not sitting outside and eating when it's 32 degrees. So we parked there in this parking lot, and then you had to walk through between the buildings and go up a stairway. And again, these houses were built when people were very tiny. I barely fit. I mean, I'm not small by any means, but with my baggy coat on, I was almost touching side to side. And they had railings, and the stairs were real steep. You know, they were carved out of brick and stone, and the buildings were stone. And so I have some pictures here, and you can see between the two will you see a space between 2 buildings? I'll try to mark it on the picture. You know, I'll put that's where we came up. And we it was a lot of hills and land, and so it was cold. We didn't do a lot of walking. I did do some driving around. I took a few pictures, like trying to get the streets. So that's what you'll see in the pictures there. And that was on our way there. Then we arrived at our hotel in Ocean City, and we were 10 blocks. Actually, we drove through Maryland, and then we drove through Delaware, and then back into Maryland. I don't know, I haven't mapped it, how we actually did that, but we were back and forth on the way there. But when we came over a bridge, we're in Maryland, and we were about 10 blocks from Delaware. So we spent a lot of time in both. A lot of time in both cities, or both states. And I will go into more details about that. I didn't take a picture of our condominium at all, but I did take a couple of pictures of the view outside. We were not directly on the ocean. The ocean is here, and then there was a row of houses, or condominium, like townhouses. And we were directly behind that. We were on the 5th floor, and our building faced that we did get a view of the ocean, so that's what I have pictures of, just a couple that I'll insert here. And then in the next video I'll go on about what else we did the rest of the week. But that was our journey on the way there, and a little history and some pictures. I took more pictures as the week went on, so I'll have more to show you and less to chat, more visual, less chat. Well, maybe less chat, we'll see. But I'm going to end this one here, and I will see you in the next video. It will probably be part 2. We'll see how long it takes me to edit this one. All right, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you next time. Bye.